I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, and today we're talking about decisiveness. It's another one of our Leadership Essentials series, and it's essential for all the obvious reasons. As a leader, we have to be decisive. There are decisions coming our way across our proverbial desk each and every day, large and small. Now, decisiveness is not about being reckless and just making knee-jerk decisions without any due thought, process, or due diligence, but it's about giving people clarity. It's about leading, generating momentum. And this is particularly relevant for new leaders. I'm seeing a lot of pressure recently for newly appointed, you might say a little bit more inexperienced leaders, feeling this pressure to get everything right. And in their desire to get everything right, they're stalling, they're delaying, they're trying to gather that little bit more intelligence, that little bit more insight, to consult just that little bit more broadly with staff and stakeholders. But the harsh reality is, indecision is still a decision. And one of the challenges with indecision is it starts to erode people's faith and confidence in you as a leader. Think about that. I often pose this question when we're covering material in this podcast. Think of the leaders you admire. I can pretty much guarantee they'll have been decisive and an ability to move themselves and the team forward. Think of those leaders that were a bit more vanilla for you. They didn't inspire you in the same way. And I would imagine that one of the traits they were lacking was decisiveness, and that inability to lead and to take those decisions and those big calls when they were needed is probably part of the reason why you don't respect them to quite the same degree. So today's format, as usual, I want to dive into why do we struggle with being decisive? A little bit of a reflection and a quick touch point on some leaders that I admire that epitomize being decisive. And of course, as ever, for those of you familiar to listening to the podcast, I want to build in some actionable takeaways, ways that you can start becoming more decisive immediately if you implement some of the actions. So please stay with me throughout this episode. As ever, my desire is to help serve you, enhance your performance and the level of fulfillment you get within your professional role. So just building on that intro a little bit more about why decisiveness matters. I've touched on the fact that people can lose confidence in you and your leadership ability, but let's take it beyond you into the wider team. If you don't have a decisive leader, it stalls momentum. People can't act. People are sitting on their hands. They're waiting to be told, go execute that strategy, deliver on that idea. So the momentum of the whole organization can stall if a leader fails to be decisive. And tying into the momentum, it creates confusion. You've been there. I'm sure you've experienced this. If the leader's not decisive, people are not exactly sure what to do. The momentum's stalling. Some people think we should go left. Some people think we should go right. Some people say, wait for the leader to make the decision. Other people are saying, no, we need to move. The leader's not going to make a decision. She or he has locked themselves in procrastination. So we need to make the decision and we need to move, which goes right back to that lack of confidence. There's no wonder people start to question your ability if they feel surrounded by confusion. They sense that lack of momentum. People want action. They want the leader to make a call. It won't always be the right call, but make a call, remove the confusion, and allow that momentum to start building again. Away from the podcast, I work as a high-performance coach. I specialize in leadership, developing people's resilience, driving their professional and personal performance to ultimately create a higher level of fulfillment. And on that journey of coaching and mentoring leaders in a diverse array of roles and sectors, cultures, and countries, you see themes, you see patterns, you see best practice, and you see problems being repeated. And that lack of decisiveness is something that I see all too regularly. Now, there's a whole raft of reasons as to why people suddenly start to struggle with their ability to be decisive. But if I had to pick out three or four of the core ones, I would say they are as follows. First and foremost, a fear of getting it wrong. Our ego drives us to want to be the perfect leader, the leader that can make all the right calls, that can give the right guidance, the right answers. And there's that inbuilt fear of don't make a mistake. And as we've talked about in other episodes, nobody's perfect. Nobody can be the man of the match, the MVP in their industry equivalent, week in, week out. We're going to get some things wrong, but we build a deluded expectation, a deluded pressure on ourselves that don't get it wrong. And that fear, when we don't deal with it and we allow it to take control of us, is one of the predominant reasons that we lose our ability to be decisive. The second core reason is a desire to please everybody. Those of you that are more seasoned leaders will recognize the futility of that aspiration, but I'm sure you still get trapped by it occasionally. And those newer, less experienced leaders are perhaps getting buffeted by that more frequently than the veterans. The harsh reality of leadership is you will never please everybody. On whatever matrix you want to apply that statement, whether that's internally with your immediate team, whether that's going a bit deeper in the entire staffing structure of your organization, whether that's into your customer base, your wider stakeholder group, you will always have some people that are very much in favor of what you do, and you will always have some people that are not in favor, and you'll have some people that are vehemently opposed to what you do. And having spent so much of my career working in professional sport as a CEO of professional sports clubs, that was all too evident on a weekly, if not daily basis. From the team that the coach picked, to the players that you were recruiting and retaining, to the players that you were letting go, to the days you played the games, to the prices you charged, you name it, you would always have those three camps: happy, unhappy, vehemently unhappy. And that's just a reality. If you try and please everybody, you are absolutely guaranteed to lock yourself in procrastination. It's a fallacy. It's impossible. I'm not saying we should go out and seek to please nobody, but you've got to go with the intelligence, your gut feel, the guidance around you and your senior leaders and your staff, and know that whatever decision you make, you can course correct, but you have to do what you in your gut and your heart believe is right, and hope that that will please the majority as opposed to offending the majority or upsetting the majority. The third core area is particularly prevalent in the modern age, and that's over-reliance on data. We have got apps, tools, tracking systems and processes that are all around us, and we're almost our own saboteurs now, because we can come up with a way to analyze to the nth degree every facet of individual and team performance. But how did we do business prior to this? As I always say with modern technology, it has a place, it's a part of our leadership toolkit, but we can't become subservient to it as our only guiding light, because we all know leadership, business, team development, performance, it's been discussed through the ages, and people did a pretty good job at being inspirational leaders, being decisive leaders, getting the best out of their team, getting the best out of themselves prior to this proliferation of technology. So yes, use data to support you, but do not become so reliant on it that you get locked in that procrastination of just one more piece of analysis, just one more data set to look at, because that will erode your ability to be decisive. And my final point really has a dotted line back to the first one. We said we've got a fear of getting it wrong, which ties back into the final point here, perfectionism. I don't want to sound despondent or miserable that leadership is tough, but it is. And the longer you're in senior leadership, the less likely you're going to have this deluded desire for perfectionism. It almost gets beaten out of you. And that's a harsh reality, but it's true. We can have high standards, and we must never lose that, and we must strive to maintain and indeed evolve those standards. So I think it's okay to aspire for perfection, but also recognize that we will never get there. We can continue on that process and that journey, looking for new ways to get the best out of ourselves and our team, but we must not hold ourselves to that premise if it is compromising our ability to be decisive. Well, unless this is perfect, we're not going to do it. I'm not going to make a decision because it's not perfect. That's where we lose the momentum. That's where we create the confusion. And that's where we start to find that people are losing confidence in us. So yes, aspire for perfection, but make the right decisions and move forward. Don't get stuck in procrastination. That is absolutely essential. I like to find quotes from inspiring leaders that bring some of these messages to life. So, Scott Robertson, the current head coach of the New Zealand International Rugby Union team, talks about the need to make decisions. And his quote reads, "You have to trust what you see, back your process and go." I think that's really important, that you just have to back the process. Believe you've got the people around you. Believe you've got the intelligence and the experience. Trust it and go. I like the simplicity of that. It's not just about strategy. Sometimes decisiveness is about having the courage to back your judgment and the people around you, alongside you as a leader, to execute the plan, the strategy. Just go. Another observation I made many years ago was reading around the former CEO, Anne Mulcahy. I hope I pronounced these names right, but I remember an article about her when she took over at Xerox back in the early 2000s. The organization was on the verge of bankruptcy and she had to make a lot of difficult decisions, a lot of big changes, reductions in headcount, uncomfortable decisions that were not necessarily popular with everybody, going back to our earlier point. And there was a particular quote that I noted down when I was reading around her, and that was that the most difficult part wasn't knowing what to do, it was committing to actually doing it. Again, decisiveness in a simple message. Ultimately, we often know what we need to do, we just need that commitment to go and do it. And that leads me nicely into a key learning I took when I was reading around Colin Powell, the former four-star general and Secretary of State in the US. He had a principle that he called the 40-70 principle. And that's really helped me in my career. It's something I talk to my clients about regularly. And the basic premise of that is that there is a sweet spot for the gathering of intelligence and feedback. If you haven't got a minimum of circa 40% of the required intelligence, then you are being reckless. You are making knee-jerk decisions, and there's a high probability that those decisions will not be effective. And obviously that has a heightened sense of pressure and risk when you're talking about military leadership. You could be putting people's lives on the line. Now, equally, going back to my earlier point around fear, and particularly in military leadership, we're talking about people's lives, there could be a desire to really procrastinate and gather every data point, every piece of intelligence. But as Colin Powell articulately surmised, if you get much past the 70% point of potential intelligence, then you are at risk of overly delaying, procrastinating, and equally putting people at risk in a military sense because there's no momentum. Bringing it back to a business perspective, it aligns beautifully with what we said earlier. There's confusion, there's a lack of momentum, and there's people questioning your credibility and losing their confidence in you. Why? Because you're taking too long. You're not being decisive. Indecision is, in fact, your decision, as we said earlier. So that 40-70 principle I've always held as a bit of a guiding light. Am I past the 40% mark? Am I at the 70% mark? It's not an exact science, but it's a guide to say, don't be reckless. You do need intel, but don't procrastinate either, trying to get the 100% picture, because you're never going to get it. And in the process, you're going to compromise everything that's good about your team's ability to execute and move forward. So I hope that 40-70 principle resonates. Now, let's build this out a little bit further. In every episode, I strive to bring some practical takeaways that you can reflect on. Some you will be doing, some perhaps you won't be doing, and that's okay. The whole raison d'etre of this podcast is to highlight themes and challenges that I'm experiencing, and then to showcase strategies and takeaways that I see working with different leaders that I coach and mentor and that have worked for me personally, so that you can find those 1 or 2% alterations in your day-to-day strategy and leadership style to lead with a high level of impact and find a greater level of fulfillment. So jumping into the top 10 tips that I want to share today. Number one is a repetition of what I've just outlined, but nonetheless, I need it to be framed in the top tips, and that is use the 40-70 principle. Don't make knee-jerk decisions, but don't procrastinate waiting to get 100% of the intel. Find that sweet spot and execute. Tip number two, define the decision deadline. This helps a lot of people that I work with. Some decisions need immediate execution, some you can reflect on. I'm not advocating procrastination, but equally, in order to remove the fear, to help us push through that indecision, we need to understand, well, how long have I got? How long have I got to gather intel, feedback, and data to make my decision? And not every decision needs to be made on the same time frame. What is that time frame? And then hold yourself to it. Make the decision when you need to make it. The third tip is frame the stakes. What do I mean by that? Well, the reality is, with every decision, we have the luxury of making another decision because we can course correct the previous one and we can build on the direction of travel, or we can change the direction of travel. That being said, some decisions have higher stakes than others. It ties into my earlier point. You know, some quick, easy decisions can be made, and that correction is very, very easy. There are other decisions that you will think of in your existing to-do list where, like, well, when I make this call, it's not as easy as that to unpick it and make massive corrections. So that helps us almost filter. What are the quick, easy ones? What are the ones that need a little bit more care? And then tying back into the decision deadline, previous point, well, how long have I got? And let's build a plan to gather what I need so that I can make those decisions. And those big estate ones, there's going to hopefully be less need to course correct post making the decision. The next tip is clarify who owns the decision. Now, not everything sits with you. Momentum can stall because we lack that clarity. There are some things that you're leading on, but there will be other things that you need your colleagues, your team leaders, the people around you to lead on. So you must ensure you've established the clarity and delegated effectively to say, that's your call. You make the decision. Because then there's no ambiguity, there's no danger of momentum stalling because people are not sure, am I making the call or is she making the call? Flush that out. Make it absolutely clear. This is my call. Wait for my decision. This is your call. I trust and empower you. Make it when you feel the time is right. The next tip is back your principles. Return to your values. They're not going to steer you wrong. We all need a framework from which to work through, and keeping your principles, your values front and center will help you make the right call and allow you to move forward with that clear conscience, knowing I've made the right decision to the best of my ability. The next point is a little bit similar to back your principles, but it's different, and that is trust your instincts. Whatever experience you've had in life, it all ties back into that gut feel, that gut instinct about what is the right call. So your principles is one framework, and then when you've got a little bit of uncertainty, trust your gut. What's your gut telling you to do? You have fine-tuned that by each and every lived experience you've encountered. It's a very, very powerful resource. And even if people around you might be steering you a certain direction, if your gut feels a bit different, as the leader, you've got to trust it. And often it will align back to your principles because people might try and steer you down a path where you feel you're in conflict with those values and principles. Even more reason to say, no, I'm going to trust my gut and I'm going to go this way. And that takes me into my next tip, limit input. You can't lead as a committee. if we go back to our earlier points about trying to please everybody, you end up just getting bogged down in excessive analysis. So, who are the key voices? Day to day, you will have a small circle, perhaps a senior leadership team around you, whose intel and perspective you really trust and value and engage with frequently. And that circle might change project to project. But what you can't have is a huge, unwieldy group around each and every decision, because that old phrase of paralysis analysis, all those opinions are feeding in, all those desires to go a certain direction are feeding in, and it becomes increasingly difficult to find an ability to be decisive. So I'm not saying you turn off the intel and the knowledge around you. You need that. No leader's an island, but be selective about who are the key voices, and do these people need to be in the process, yes or no? We've talked a lot in previous episodes about inefficiency of meetings, communication getting lost, becoming ambiguous because there are just too many people in rooms, virtual and face-to-face, where they don't need to be. That is a spin-off and it's discussed on other episodes, but when we come back to decisiveness, I'll be far more effective and far more decisive if you have a smaller, more dynamic group informing you than a huge, unwieldy committee. My next tip is avoid emotional spirals. Easier said than done, but as a leader, you've got to separate emotion from action. And if we allow emotions to cloud our judgment, it's going to compromise the quality of our decisions and our ability to be decisive. Takes time, takes experience, but with practice, we have to be able to step back, put those emotions to one side, lean back into our principles, trust our gut, listen to those key voices I've alluded to in previous points, and execute and make the decision that we feel is right. The next tip I want to share is reflect and adjust. I've made this point repeatedly, that even those biggest stake decisions that we've said, take the care to reflect on this and establish those clear deadlines of when do I make the decision, even those big ones that you're desperately trying to get right, on occasion, you may get wrong. So it's imperative that we reflect, that we find the time in our diary regularly to say what's gone well, what's not gone well, what decisions were spot on, what decisions actually, with the benefit of hindsight and the subsequent intelligence that's come my way, were wrong or need adjusting. Have the courage to put your hand up when you get it wrong. That builds trust and confidence in your team, that they can see that you've got the ability to step past your ego and say, my fault, I made the wrong call. But equally, the importance of reflection is that we educate ourselves and those around us to avoid individual or collectively making the same mistakes again. That's the definition of madness for me. Who amongst us can say, I've never made a mistake? Of course we have. In every facet of our professional and personal life, we've made mistakes. But the highest performers take the time to reflect, embrace the learnings, and ensure they don't make those mistakes again. And equally, embrace the learnings of things that have gone well to help fine-tune that gut instinct we talked about earlier, so that it will inform you and steer you along to make better decisions in the future. Bringing it all together, my final tip: don't seek perfection. We talked about that earlier in the episode. It's deluded. What we're seeking instead is clarity. Do I understand and do my team understand what we're trying to achieve? We're looking at direction as a consequence. How do we start to move towards that destination, that achievement that we're all aspiring to? And progress. Forward momentum, making decisions that create that forward momentum. Yes, it'd be wonderful if they were all the perfect decision, and sometimes they will be, but equally we're comfortable knowing if it's not quite right, we can course correct, we can reflect, we can keep moving, but we're not going to make indecision our key decision. So as I bring this episode to a close, and on that very point, I just want to finish with a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, who said, "In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing." I think that's a wonderful way to frame the end of this episode. You will not get everything right. Do not let that fear of making a mistake reduce your ability to be decisive. Do not have that deluded notion of perfectionism because that will trap you in indecision. Trust your gut, make the decisions, learn as you go, be decisive, remove confusion for you and your team, build momentum, keep your hand on the tiller, watch how that momentum unfolds, make decisions to course correct or build on the direction of travel, and just trust yourself. You will get the buy-in of your people. Everybody recognizes you're human. They recognize you won't get everything right, but we aspire to get more right than we get wrong. So I hope, as ever, this episode has prompted reflection, has given you that little bit of courage to say, hey, not everybody is decisive. We all have moments where we find it easier and periods and chapters where we find it harder. But if we can embrace these principles, particularly the notions of simple frameworks like the 40-70 principle, we can be more decisive. You can be more decisive. Your impact will grow as a consequence, and your personal performance and the performance of those that you are tasked with leading will also grow as a consequence. So I wish you the very best of luck with the implementation and look forward to hearing how you get on. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.